Debate that one, and let's move on to my guest, Jerry Lake. Jerry, good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Paul.
It
Great.
is a pleasure seeing you, sir. Under these circumstances, somebody needs to go fishing very soon. Let me just put it that way. How are you? It's good to have you.
Hey, I'm great, Paul. It's good to be here. This is my first time to ever be on your show.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. We didn't do any remotes over the years because at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's not the optimum time to get people in a store on High Street. But
Right.
let me just say this: it's been 161 years. Carter Diamonds have been one of the most trusted names in jewelry. 2007, the Mississippi Department of Archives and History erected a historical marker where it remains today. And here are the inscriptions on this one. And I say this because I doubt very seriously many businesses have an historical marker there. Established in 1849 by Carl J. von Suter as the Carl J. von Suter Jewelry and Art Emporium. Businesses was once located in the majestic Arcade Building on Capitol Street. And then in 1918, one of von Suter's employees, John C. Carter, purchased the store, and after his death in 1946, Lee Letwinger bought the business and moved it to where it is now on High Street. And then it was purchased by a guy named Jerry Lake way back in 1997. Carter Jewelers is considered one of the oldest continuously operating jewelry businesses in the United States of America. 1997, when Jerry bought it, Slick Willie was starting his second term. Tony Braxton, Unbreak My Heart, was number one. The movie Men in Black was number one, and gas was $1.23 a gallon.
Yeah, that's a story. It's quite a story to come behind such a historic business.
I was just wondering, this Letwinger, how did, am I taking it that's your father or grandfather who bought the store from Mr. Letwinger?
No, Lee Letwinger, I was in the wholesale business, and I represented diamond jewelry importers and manufacturers, and actually towards the end of that career, I represented the biggest diamond jewelry liquidator in the United States and maybe the world. But anyway, I used to sell to Lee, and he was just a really nice guy. And anyway, I sold a lot of product to him, and Lee got Alzheimer's. And I was just about to retire from the business, and I'd bought like 80 acres down in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And I told my son I was going to go down there and develop that. And so I had a lot of my friends who had wanted to go out of business, with my experience in the liquidation company. I'd gone in and liquidated their businesses, and my son had been with me, and he said, well, Dad, he said, I wish you would teach me the diamond business before you get out of it. And I was kind of shocked. He was still in school at the University of Alabama. And so I said, well, one of the oldest and I think better jewelry businesses in the country, I'm sure it's going to be sold. I said, my buddy Lee Letwinger got Alzheimer's. And I said, if you're serious about it, I said, I'll take a ride up over to Jackson and see what happens. And so I get over there, and they had Lee's niece. He didn't have any children, but she was the conservator. And she told me that, she had signed a contract with some people out of Chicago. And anyway, she showed me the numbers and the inventory and everything, and I was pretty well versed on what jewelry stores go for and how things would typically play out. And so we had a good meeting, and I told her I really loved her uncle, and he wasn't there, but I said, be sure and tell him that I said hello, and I loved him. And so when I'm leaving, she says, Jerry, the people that I have signed the contract with that violated the contract, and it's voidable from her on her side.
Whoa.
And she said, I would much rather sell this business to you than to them. And I knew the people, and their reputation was they were a little slippery,
spotty.
Yeah, and I didn't tell her that, but anyway, the price was over. It was over $1 million, and I'd spent most of my money buying this property down at Gulf Shores, and I wasn't flush with cash at that time. And so I called my bankers, and they said, she wanted to know that I could buy and close on the business prior to when her contract was with them, because, she wanted the money no matter what.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a contract with her, just to, so I called, some of my rich buddies in Atlanta and some other places, and they didn't seem to have the money, but there was a good friend of mine, Gordon Rosen, in Tuscaloosa. He was a wealthy lawyer. And, some of these deals I'd done for where I'd bought these stores and closed them out, I'd gone to him and I'd borrowed, maybe up to $350,000, but never like $1 million. And so I said, Gordon, I need a little over $1 million on this deal, but I said it's a good deal, and and I told him that I would even pay him more than, I didn't say his usual interest rate that he charged me, but a real good interest rate on it, and I said, I'm good for the money. And he said, well, Jerry, he said, that's just really my wife's. He said, you're about the only guy that I've ever loaned money to, and my wife, she wants me to be out of the loan business. And I told him I could I could certainly understand that.
Uh-oh, yeah.
And so anyway, I told him, I appreciated him. But just before I was leaving, I said, Gordon, I've got a question for you. I said, how much law do you have to practice to make $50,000? And there was silence there for just a little while. And I said, I really don't want to know. I said, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, if you'll do this deal, I'll give you an extra $50,000 for doing it. And he said, well, okay. He said, I want a mortgage on that property down there at Gulf Shores because you're not going to be able to develop it for a while doing this store. So I said, okay. And anyway, he made arrangements to have the funds wired, and then I go to Jackson, and then the stock market drops like the biggest drop in the world, right? Just prior to when I'm supposed to close on the place. And so I remember that night praying that give me the wisdom to make the right decision here. I hadn't bought it yet, and so anyway, the next day, Paul, when I came into the store, I was just it just came in front of me, one of the FedEx bills, and it had the account number for Carter Jewelers on there, and the account number was exactly what my birthday was.
Oh, all right. Hold it right there. As you well know, we have to liquidate some business here on our own, so
right.
Hang on for that one. Back with another segment with Jerry. We don't have a lot of time, so I want to compress it because I have a couple of other questions here. Yeah. But you find yourself, you have the financing, you open the business on High Street, and you explained a lot about it, because I dealt with, for many, many years in marketing, a guy who was a traveling liquidator of furniture companies. And this guy, he knew what he was doing. He would close it down. When he opened it up, all of the advertising and everything else. There is an art to that, as far as a liquidator is concerned. And you were bringing that specialty to the promotional overtones of your business.
That's correct. I had that experience. And actually, when I bought Carter Jewelers, I had never never run a retail jewelry business, even though, I don't know, a lot of my customers, they would come to me for advice. And I would tell them, what I thought or knew, or from my experience, from common sense. And when I first got in this business, by a company with the company called Art Carve, they gave me a test, and this test was kind of what you would do in certain situations, and they were trying to hire people that were promotable, and anyway, the test was well over an hour long, and I didn't hear from them as far as wanting to hire me, and I took another job. I accepted another job, and then I get a call from them, and I tell his name was Bob Metaxas. I said, Bob, I didn't hear from you, and I knew I didn't do good on that test you gave me. And he said, Jerry, he said, you scored the highest score of anybody that's ever taken the test.
Wow.
And so, anyway, they upped my pay, and that's how I got into the jewelry business. And anyway, yeah. But as far as doing sales, there are a lot of things that you have to kind of really you need to know. It's there's a lot, and jewelry business. You're dealing in commodities that are meltable. You're dealing in a lot of diamonds and gemstones. Some things you have to know. You kind of need to know, like, what the secondary market is and what you can sell and get top price for, like wholesale and just a lot of things.
Has anybody come to you and said, look, these are high grade diamonds, and they were trying to pass them off to you, and of course you knew they were hot?
There has been some of that. It's but let me tell you, I can usually look at the people selling, or when I meet them, and if the goods that they're selling don't match up with the people, then I assume that it's there. And there's one. Let me tell you something. There's one thing, and my brother was a longtime circuit judge. You don't do anything that is questionable, and you don't buy goods that you think are hot. And that's happened. And I don't want to indict these people. I tell them that that they might do better maybe going to a pawn shop.
Have you seen the business change, though, as far as the culture? Because with each culture, diamonds may not be the same thing they were now than when we got married, as boomers are. Or is that changing?
This business, like most businesses, is in a constant state of change.
Yeah.
You talk about styles, and now you throw in, there was a time period where you've got diamonds that have been clarity enhanced, which they're natural diamonds that they make them prettier to look like they're more than what they are, and now it's when they first came out with lab-grown diamonds, they were actually more expensive than the naturals because it was costing so much money to produce them.
Yeah.
And they grow them. But now they've gotten a lot better at that. And, your lab, the only way, there's no gemologist or anybody else that can just look at a diamond and tell you whether or not it was grown in a laboratory or whether or not nature grew it. But there's machines and testers that through some graining and other things, they can be detected, and there's a lot of difference in the prices of them. And if you're, the lab-grown diamonds are just as much diamonds as the ones
anything else. I wonder, we talked about the change in the industry, but you also, since 1997, Jackson was a vibrant city that held a lot of promise. And now you take a look at it at 2023, it's a little bit different, as we all know. But the city's changed around you also.
Well, it has. But, the one thing that has kind of saved the jewelry business is that, it's a diamond an engagement ring is it's still kind of expected. The guys like to give the engagement rings because that's kind of like a down payment or a deposit on a marriage contract, and it's
especially here in the South.
Yeah, especially here in the South, and it's kind of and the girl expects a engagement ring, and it's one thing I've always tried to make. I've always tried to get these guys to not go spending way more than what they can afford. Yeah. I try to guide them to try to buy something that is, they can handle.
What's next for Jerry Lake now? You just going to go fishing or tour the world, or you just going to?
Well, I do plan to probably tour the world and travel and just try to have fun and do things I want to do. It's I did lose my significant other after 18 years a little while back, which that was kind of something to get used to. But one thing that that people need to know. Now I'm liquidating my inventory, and it's 100% liquidation in both of my stores. But I have contracts to sell both my main store in Jackson to my son. He wanted to just buy it outright, but the inventory is really massive, and it was just not anything that with the bank. It was just too much, and the same for my store in Vicksburg. Ginger Richards, she's like my daughter. She's worked there over 30 years, and she wants to buy it. So, but they couldn't afford the inventories, and we even talked about having a real aggressive sale, but that really didn't work either, because that would, if they bought the inventory, it would be a leftover, less desirable type of inventory.
Yeah.
The only thing that made any sense was for me to completely liquidate the inventories at both stores. And then, now, if they wanted to buy some of what was left over, they could. I mean, they have good
so
credit.
they'll be starting fresh with the inventory.
They're going to have fresh, best-selling inventory, but instead of having the zillions of dollars I have, it'll be much smaller.
Before we run out of time here, what's the drop-dead date that people have to take advantage of this?
Well, you know what? I'm still kind of playing that by ear. Paul, I will tell you, we started the sale, I guess, about a week or so ago, and our numbers have been. We've been selling between the two stores a lot of jewelry every day. It's I think. Probably we'll thank God. We've got Christmas coming up, because that's
you're doing it at the right time of the year.
Yeah, right. It's we'll sell the majority of this inventory will be sold like probably through Christmas, and then I'll maybe I'll carry it through until mid-January or so, and then we'll close for a little while, and they'll get their inventories in, and which they're kind of working on that, and a lot of the same vendors that they will buy from. So that's kind of the time frame for what we're looking at. And then
I guess the name of the store in Jackson is going to be the same, isn't it?
It'll be both will be Carter Jewelers under the new owners. And
we got about 30 seconds, so go on and let's wrap it up here.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the long and the short of it. There'll be a lot of the ending inventory. Some of that I'll go to the secondary market, the wholesale, and I may sell some of it to my old company. They're still in business. It's a liquidation company. The good thing about them is they come in and they write you a check.
Yeah.
For everything.
Let me say this, you have made a lot of people happy over the years. You really have.
Well,
our friendship and association with you, and all the remotes that JT has done there, and now Gerard, man, we thank you so very, very much.
Well, listen, let me tell you, I love you guys at SuperTalk, and your audience has been